Well, welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast. I am joined today by Dale. Dale, we talk often. I don't know that I see you on camera as much as we text and talk, but it's good to see you as we enter the 2026 cycle. How are things?
Yeah, they're good. It never stops when you're draft guys like us, Jim, and everybody that's tuning in to watch this. One starts, the next one. Like I was already the past month or so winding down for the 25 draft before it even got here. It's like, all right, time to shift focus to 26. You want to be ahead of the game. That's what this is all about.
Yeah, so we are doing our summer scouting, and as Dale said, it never stops. So as Dale and I sit here and podcast, and we are recording this on Mother's Day.
Happy
so
Mother's Day.
The draft finished, I think it was 15 days ago. I don't even know if it was 15. Maybe it was only 8. I don't know. We're in like this really weird no man's land of the past draft and then the 2026 draft starting. But we're going to go over players Dale has watched and added to his board. And I believe we're covering the offensive gamut with this recording. But Dale, I think we're going to start with quarterbacks, right?
Yes, sir. And I'll just start at the top of and this is early, and that's what you always tell people. This isn't meant to be like, this guy's number one, and he's going to be number one. I might watch a couple more games because most of these guys I've watched, maybe 2 games of at this point. So just to preface that, it's a very early watch list. But the guy that I have, because he's played a lot of football, and I'll also say I don't have like Arch Manning. I don't have Sam Levitt on my list. I think those guys may be in the next class. But if they're balling out and they decide to go out, I'm definitely going to be watching them. I already watched some of them, but they're just not on my particular list. They'll be on a lot of other people's. But Garrett Nussmeier is my top guy. And as we do this, I want to give you everyone like a school, or here's a game that he played, that one of his better games, one that I watched that I think you'll be able to see a lot of good things about him and some of the bad things, some turnovers. So the Oklahoma tape was one that I say for Garrett Nussmeier. And it's fun because for this draft cycle, you get to see guys on the defense for Oklahoma in that same game making plays like R. Mason Thomas, Grayson Holton. But it shows what I like about Nuss in that game as well. His arm strength, anticipation. He had several deep balls that he hit, just perfect. And then his toughness. So he was actually knocked out of that game. I believe it was sometime in the first quarter. But he comes back in, I think, before halftime even. Drilled from the blind side, injured. Like I said, he comes back in and absolutely balls out. It just showed what kind of player he is. He's also the son of Doug Nussmeier, who's the Saints offensive coordinator. So he's got that football background, that high IQ, all that kind of stuff you want to see as well. He needs to cut down on turnovers, but as of right now, he's my early favorite for quarterback 1. But it's a fun class. And the next guy I honestly want to talk about is Lenoir Sellers from South Carolina. Good chance he could be number 1, and he's the guy who could, go back to school again. He's got a couple years of eligibility left. But, man, his tape is just fun to watch. He's an absolute magician. He's tough to break down. He's listed at like 243, so he's got a tremendous like lower half. These guys will think they have him in their grasp, and he gets out of it. And one of the games I watched, because a ton of great defensive prospects and a school that's going to be mentioned throughout this process a million times, and that's Clemson. So Peter Woods, T.J. Parker, those names that you're going to hear, some of the top defensive players in this next draft cycle. He was able to lead South Carolina to a 17-14 win. He only had 164 passing yards, but he had 166 rushing. So he's that dual threat, elite prospect. He's got a strong arm as well. There's just a lot to like with Lenoir Sellers. So it won't surprise me at all if he's a lot of people's number 1 quarterback to start this year, because he is exciting to watch, and he's must-watch football on Saturdays or whatever other day a game is on in college football. Third guy a lot of people know about. He was more accurate last year. It's Drew Aller from Penn State. He just has to be more consistent. His footwork, everything. You watch games like Ohio State, those have not been his best games. But one I would tell people to put on to watch him, the good and the bad, is the USC game. So 391 yards. Incredible. I mean, this is a guy who's like, I believe he's about 6'5", 240. So another big bodied, strong arm guy that type that the NFL likes. And he can move a little bit. He just doesn't always do it. But if he needs to pick up some yards with his legs, he can. But it's a put up or shut up. Here's a guy I could see being a top 5 pick for a team. He could also be one of those guys like Quinn Ewers or Carson Beck that completely fall in the draft next year. So this is put up or shut up time for him for Penn State. They got both the running backs, which we'll discuss here in a little bit. They got some transfers at wide receiver. Stacked group. But 3 interceptions, 2 touchdowns, 391 yards. It's just him in a nutshell. Too many turnovers, inconsistent, but his good is really good and his bad is really bad. Next guy on the list is Cade Klubnik from Clemson. And I would say watch that same game. Watch him versus South Carolina. That was one of the last games of the season that Clemson lost 17-14, but he had 280 yards, a couple rushing touchdowns, and then also the conference championship and the playoff run. So if you want to watch Cade Klubnik, just go to his last 3 games of the year because he was really coming on. He had 262 yards against SMU with 4 touchdowns. And then against Texas in a loss, he still had 336 yards and 3 touchdowns. He kept them in that game. And Texas was loaded with talent, as we've seen a ton of their guys get drafted just a couple weeks ago. He's a 5-star recruit, played a ton of football, another guy that can move. That's one thing with this quarterback class. There's a bunch of guys that can get out and run that are dual threats. And he's got a really good quick release. He gets the ball out fast, gets it to his receivers like Antonio Williams, who is another guy to discuss, and they got some younger guys that'll be in other classes. John Mateer, next guy. This is a guy who was at Washington State, but he will be transferring to Oklahoma this year. His game versus Boise State is one I would tell people that they should want to go and watch. He had sacked 8 times, but still threw for over 300 yards, 70% completion rate. And then San Jose State was just a fun game to actually watch. It's a double overtime thriller, 54-52. So if you just like football, you're going to love that, but also watching John Mateer as a quarterback. He had 390 passing yards and over 100 rushing, which shows what kind of dual threat. Now, he's a little smaller. He's like 6'1", and sometimes I think he needs to stay in the pocket a little more and look for his receivers. He takes off running a little too much, so there's some concerns with maybe durability. Will he stay healthy going forward because he's not the biggest guy in the world, and I don't want him running all the time. But it's going to be fun to watch him at Oklahoma this year. Then an opposite body type, a much bigger guy, and this is going to be a lot of people's favorites as well, Fernando Mendoza. I think a lot of people are starting to talk about him, 6'5", 225. He's been very accurate. He played at California the last couple of years. This year he's transferring to Indiana. So to watch him playing with Kirk Cignetti, the coach there, and picking up where Curtis Rourke left off, and Indiana was playing some good football, I think that'll be must watch. And Stanford was one of the games I watched of him. It shows his ability. This kid, I mean, he's big, and he is not afraid to stand in there and deliver the football. I was talking about Mateer wants to take off early. That is not Mendoza. Mendoza will stand in there and take a hit right in the mouth and deliver the football accurately. So I really like that about him. He can also run when necessary. He's not as athletic as, Lenore Sellers and some of these guys that I talked about, but he's a very fun prospect. And I think he's going to continue climbing draft boards throughout this process, especially just picturing him in the Indiana offense with Elijah Surratt and some of the weapons they have. So that's kind of the 6 that I wanted to touch on the most. And then my list will have 15 total guys on it, but that's the kind of the top 6 for me right now that I wanted to hit on. Miller Moss transferring to Louisville from USC. Carson Beck transferring to Miami. Down season, a lot of people know about Carson Beck, transferred from Georgia. Diego Pavia, fun prospect. That's his 8th year. It's like his 6th year of college football at Vanderbilt. Connor Wegman transferring to Houston. Mark Gronowski, 4-year starter at South Dakota State, who was winning championships, competing with like North Dakota State, who wins a lot of titles in that division. He's transferred to Iowa. Luke Altmaier with Illinois. That's a fun player that I think people want to keep an eye on. They had a really good season. I think that could be a sneaky playoff team. Jalen Daniels, dual threat from Kansas, 6-year guy, 57% completion percentage. So I don't love that about him. Kyron Drones from Virginia Tech, another very mobile quarterback. And then Noah Fafita, very good in 23, but even with Ted McMillan, he didn't have the same success in 24. So that's kind of my early list. There's a bunch of other guys, Taylon Green, people I need to watch more of, but that's my early quarterback list to kick this thing off.
So that's a good list, right? So now from a draft professor standpoint, I believe that's 15 quarterbacks on the watch list, not including underclassmen, right? So like Dale, like that's huge. So draft professors, thanks you. I do also want to point out to Fafita, right? Noah Fafita's best path to success is Bryce Young succeeding.
Yeah. Very undersized, yes.
Yeah. So you're getting like a Doug Flutie, Bryce Young-sized quarterback there. So if you're cheering for Noah Fafita, you probably want to cheer for Bryce Young to have a good year 3 in Carolina as well.
For sure.